Write in third form. Number 1, cos of 150 degrees. Number 2, sine of 330 degrees. And number 3, tan of 225 degrees. So step 1, we're going to draw the unit circle. So we start with our x-axis and our y-axis. And we draw our unit circle around it, making sure we have a centre of 0, 0. And we label the first quadrant as A, which means that all ratios are positive. The second quadrant as S, which means that sine is the only ratio that's positive. The third quadrant as T, which represents tan, which tells us that tan is the only ratio that's positive. And the fourth quadrant as C, which tells us that cos is the only ratio that's positive. Then we're going to draw on 150 degrees. So remember, we always start at the positive part of our x-axis and we work anti-clockwise. So from here to here is 90 degrees. And if we keep going, we'll end up at 150 degrees. So starting at the positive part of the x-axis and going anti-clockwise, we end up at 150 degrees. So remember, this is 0 degrees, this is 90 degrees, so this is 150 degrees. Step 2, the angle is in the second quadrant, therefore its cos is negative. So the second quadrant has an S in it, which means that sine is the only ratio that's positive. Therefore, cos and tan are negative, and we're interested in cos of 150 degrees, so we know that cos is negative. Step 3 is we find the reference angle. If from here to here is 150 degrees, and this is a straight line, because the x-axis is a straight line, then the entire straight line will add up to 180 degrees, so the reference angle is going to be 30 degrees. So the leftover angle between 150 degrees and a straight line, or the x-axis, is 30 degrees. So the reference angle is 30 degrees because 180 minus 150 is 30. Now if you put cos 30 degrees into your calculator, you'll come up with root 3 over 2, or you can use your formula book to find it. And then all we have to do is make it negative, because we know that in the second quadrant, sine is the only ratio that's positive. So cos 150 degrees will be minus root 3 over 2. So next we want to write in third form sine 330 degrees. So step 1, we're going to draw 330 degrees. We start by drawing our x-axis, our y-axis, our unit circle that has a centre of 0, 0. So remember, the positive part of our x-axis is 0 degrees. So working our way anti-clockwise, we get to 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and eventually we get to 330 degrees. Step 2. The angle is in the fourth quadrant, therefore its sine is negative. So we're interested in sine of 330 degrees. 330 degrees lies in the fourth quadrant. And we have a C in the fourth quadrant, which tells us that cos is the only ratio in the fourth quadrant that's positive. So therefore sine must be negative. So we know that our answer is going to be negative. Step 3, the reference angle is 30 degrees. So if from 0 all the way around to 0 gives us 360 degrees, because there's 360 degrees in a full circle, then from 0 to 330 is going to be our angle. So 360 minus 330 leaves us with 30. So our reference angle is 30 degrees because 360 minus 330 is 30. You can put sine of 30 degrees into the calculator, or you can use your formula book. You'll end up getting a half. And since we know sine is negative in the fourth quadrant, it's going to be minus a half. So sine of 330 degrees is minus a half. Okay, then we're going to find tan of 225 degrees. So step 1, draw 225 degrees. So again, we start out with our x-axis, our y-axis, our unit circle that goes around a centre of 0, 0. So we always start at the positive part of our x-axis and go anti-clockwise. So we start at 0 degrees, we go up to 90 degrees, around to 120 degrees, and then we get to 225 degrees. So, step 2, so the angle is in the third quadrant. So this is the first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant. Therefore, its tan is positive. So remember, we're interested in tan of 225 degrees. And we have a t in the third quadrant, which tells us that tan is the only ratio in this quadrant that's positive. So we know our tan is positive, so we know our answer will be positive. So we need to find our reference angle. So we went all the way around to 225 degrees. So we need to find what the difference is between 225 and 180, because this is a straight line, this is 180, so we need to find the leftover angle. So the reference angle is 45 degrees, because 225 degrees minus 180 is 45. So 225 degrees minus 180 degrees leaves us with 45 degrees. So our reference angle is 45 degrees. So tan of 45 degrees is 1. You can get that in the formula book or in the calculator. And we know that tan is positive, so tan of 225 degrees is 1. Okay, given cos of A equals minus a half, and angle A is greater or equal to 0 degrees, less than or equal to 360 degrees, find two values of A that satisfy the equation. So step 1, we're going to locate the quadrants in which A lies. So as cos of A is negative, so we have minus a half, negative, then A lies in the S quadrant or in the T quadrant. So if we have a look at our unit circle, so this is our y-axis, this is our x-axis, this is our unit circle with a centre of 0, 0. We know that this is the first quadrant, this is the second quadrant, this is the third quadrant, and this is the fourth quadrant. So we have it drawn out again over here. So in the first quadrant, all ratios are positive. So in the first quadrant, all ratios are positive. In the second quadrant, sine is the only positive angle. So that's why our cos angle, which is negative, could lie in the second quadrant. In the third quadrant, tan is our only positive angle in the third quadrant. Therefore, cos of A could actually lie in the third quadrant, because we know that cos of A is negative, and we know that cos is negative in the third quadrant. And in the fourth quadrant, we know that cos is the only positive angle. So cos being negative cannot lie in the fourth quadrant. So it could lie in the S quadrant, or it could lie in the T quadrant. So remember, we have C, A, S, T. C, A, S, T. So this is the S quadrant, or the second quadrant. This is the tan quadrant, or the third quadrant. So in this quadrant, sine is the only ratio that's positive, and in this quadrant, tan is the only ratio that's positive. So if cos is negative, it could be in the second quadrant, or the sine quadrant, or the third quadrant, which is also called the tan quadrant. So it could be in either of these. Okay, so step 2, we need to find the reference angle. So this is going to be A, so we're going to try find that A. So what we want to do is press shift or a second function in our calculator, so that cos minus 1 comes up, and a bracket should open, and we're going to put a half into the bracket, close the bracket, press equals, and 60 degrees should come up. So this is the inverse of cos. So if we put a half into the bracket, we should get 60 degrees. Okay, so the reference angle is the angle less than 90 degrees, whose cosine is a half, Therefore, the reference angle is 60 degrees. So step 3, find the values for A. So A is going to be 180 degrees plus 60, which will give us 240 degrees. Or A is going to be 360 degrees minus 60, which will be 300 degrees. So A could be 240 degrees, or A could be 300 degrees. So if we just have a look at our first unit circle, we can see that our straight line, our x-axis, is going to be 180 degrees. And then add on the 60 degrees, we'll end up getting to 240 degrees. So 180 degrees plus 60 degrees is 240 degrees. Or, if we draw out our unit circle again, remember we're starting at our positive part of our x-axis and going right the way around. We get 90, 180, 270, and then we end up at 300 degrees. So the easy way to do this is say, well, a full circle is 360 degrees. So 360 degrees, take away 60 degrees, leaves us at 300 degrees. So A could be 360 minus 60, which is 300 degrees. So cos of A equals minus a half, and A is greater or equal to 0 or less than or equal to 360 degrees. And the two values of A that satisfy the equation are 240 degrees or 300 degrees.